Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Music Impossible. My name is Professor Jim. I'm so glad you've come back to see us. If it's your first time, you know the drill. Like, follow, comment, all of the above. Ring that bell so you get notified of all new videos. Now, this is in our playlist of Sibelius tutorials, and we're doing a series here of just looking at the menu up here. And this is great for if someone who's a beginner at Sibelius, but I will tell you, looking at something like this for you advanced and intermediate folks out there, oftentimes I go back and I was like, oh man, I forgot that that feature existed, or how do I do this? And then I one of the benefits of teaching here is I get to sort of reintroduce myself to some things that I may have even forgotten about. I use this software a lot. Some really great things here. We're going to look at the View tab. Across the top here, you might see that there's a number of tabs up here, and they, of course, feature all of the different aspects of the program that you can do. We're going to look at the View tab. Now, if you're interested in the Panels tab, we have a short video on panels that we've done prior to this one. So take a look at the Panels one. But we're going to look at the rest of the View tab. And this is basically how we view the program while we're using. This is the document view. So if I wanted to look at everything horizontally, and I would scroll left to right, I would use the horizontal. And then if I wanted to do things vertically, I would do it that way. I tend to do horizontally. That's how it defaults. That's how it opened the first time I ever did it. And so that's how I got used to working in Sibelius horizontally. Occasionally, I like to use the panorama view. It's just one giant long chunk of measures. So that's kind of cool. When I need to do large, deletions of things, specifically when I export into different parts out of a score, sometimes I want to go make mass changes in a particular part. But typically when I'm in score mode here, I'm going to be using the horizontal version. Zoom's pretty obvious. There's a couple presets here that you might find helpful that can get you to where you need to get to quickly. And then invisibles. This is kind of the longer part of this video, going through all these different invisibles. And why do we need invisibles or want invisibles in our Sibelius? Now, another thing you got to remember too, anytime you want to understand something maybe a little bit different about Sibelius, you can hover right over something. Little pop-up window comes up and it'll tell you, well, what are bar numbers? Well, bar numbers, I can have a bar number on each measure, if that's helpful to you, but that's not something we really want to see. We don't want that printed, and so it's in blue to show us that it's an invisible item. It won't get printed, but it could be a helpful thing for you. And if you wanted to look at page margins, that's pretty obvious what that might be. It's going to show you your margins left, right, top, bottom. Handles are helpful, and this is kind of one I'll talk about for a second. A handle is generally, let's say we have, let's do some quarter notes here. Let's say we wanted to slur from C to G here. We go ahead in here and we put our slur in, and you notice all of these different handles that pop up, these little square things. These are called handles, and these are what we can grab onto, and we can move certain things around. Now, Sibelius smartly, with its magnetic layout, will attach things where it makes the most sense, where you might usually want them to be, and 99 times out of 100, you're not going to want to mess with these at all. But sometimes there's a circumstance where you do want to move some stuff around. So that's something to consider their handles. And then if you have a bunch of notes going, you don't want to have handles for every little thing, and so you want to turn that off when you're not working with handles. There's hidden objects you might want to have in your score. Hidden objects, so like it says here in the box, they'll be light gray. You normally want those switched off because it can get kind of cluttery. Sometimes I put hidden objects in where I want, maybe I want the playback to do something different with, tempo or with dynamics. Maybe I want to put a little swell in the music, just a sort of musicality type of thing, but I don't want that to be shown in the score. I don't need to see a bunch of crescendos and decrescendo hairpins all over the place, just if I'm showing a little bit of a swell. I might hide that object so it doesn't print and doesn't clutter up my score, but in the playback I might get a little bit of a crescendo, decrescendo there for that. Here we have layout marks. So a lot of times you might want to, it defaults to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 or 10 measures or something like that. Everything defaults to a certain amount of measures per line. What's it over here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 bars there. And you might want it to default to 8. You might want one line to be 6 bars, the next line to be 10. And anytime you do sort of do a manual thing like that, it'll change the layout, of course, of the piece, of the score. And here it'll show you exactly where all of those changes were made here in layout marks. I like attachment lines. We're showing attachment lines right now. An attachment line, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Attachment lines are important. You see this little sort of dotted line here with the arrow on it? That's called an attachment line, meaning that this slur starts on this beat. It's kind of pointing to beat 1 here of this bar. And I can move that attachment line if I want to a different note. And you see how it jumps to beat 2, beat 1. It's showing you where that slur is starting. And I ran into a problem one time with a dynamic. I had a lot of 16th notes, and I wanted to go from piano on the 16th note run to forte on this whole note that the 16th note run landed on. But I had the forte 1/16th note too early, and that last 16th note was really popping out, and I couldn't figure out why. Once I figured out what attachment lines were, I was able to see that I had that forte off, and it was the attachment line that helped me recognize that. I was able just to click that handle, move it over a 16th note, and it was fixed. Playback line is obvious. That's the green line that appears when you're doing playbacks. Annotations and comments, or if you have any comments or notes for yourself on it, I use comments and sticky notes a lot when I'm working with students and giving feedback. The replay line, this is where you would go if you were replaying something. If you wanted to listen to it from a certain point, it's your replay line. And then you can have highlights in different parts. If you've highlighted something, it'll show your highlights. You can also hide those if you'd like. The differences here is kind of interesting because if you say you write, I don't know, let's say a quartet, a string quartet, you have a violin, viola, cello, and bass, and you want to export your score to parts. And you export everything. It's kind of a cool feature Sibelius has. You write this 4-part thing in a score. Now you're ready to separate it into parts so you can hand it out. It can be played by players. You can export those parts, and the parts get exported. A lot of times when you export the parts, they're usually really good. Sometimes they require a little bit of finesse in the formatting and changing some things around. You might have to do some other things in the for the notes and the placement of the notes and things like that in the parts. When you change something in a part, it will show you in the score or highlight in the score where that change has been made. Also here in between versions, if you have 2 versions of a score you're working on at the same time, it'll do that. Magnetic layout is fantastic. It's really cool. This will show you if you have any collisions, if stuff's too close together or overlapping, if you've grouped anything. Magnetic layout usually does all that work for you, and you don't have to do a whole lot to it. It's a really cool feature here. It makes everything nice and pretty with very little work to do on your part to make it look professional. Rulers are obvious. We even see rulers a lot in just basic word processing softwares. We have staff rulers that tell us how far everything is from the margins, how far they are apart from one another. Same thing with objects. We can have different objects that we choose. We might choose a couple of objects, a couple of slurs. How far apart are they? Maybe we want to take a look at dynamic markers to make sure they're evenly spaced the way we want them to be, etc. We can also select multiple things, and if we have a selection of things, we can see a ruler for that as well. Those just toggle on and off. Note colors. I kind of like the note colors. Now, one of the things that's cool with note colors is a lot of the times we're writing for instruments. And I know that the clarinet, the lowest note on a clarinet that you can play, a B-flat clarinet, is an E. So if I had this G here, and I wanted to write an E on the clarinet, it would still be black on the clarinet part because, well, the clarinet can play that note. But if I went down one more note, it would have turned red for clarinet. This happens to be a simple treble clef staff, and so therefore anything below G turns red because Sibelius is saying, well, wait a minute, if you're writing anything that's more than 2 ledger lines down, you might as well write it in alto clef or bass clef or something else that makes more sense so you don't have all these ledger lines crowding your score. And so it's a really cool feature. You can turn that on or off up here in note colors. I prefer to keep it on. There's also one for voice colors. If you have different voices going, they'll turn different colors for that. Panels was in a different video. Check that out. In Windows, it's pretty obvious. If you have more than one file open, you can tile those different files. You can create a new window here, go full screen, or switch from one version of Sibelius. Not one version, switch from one file of Sibelius to another with switch windows. All right, well, that's the View tab. We've knocked that out in a couple of videos here, and stay tuned. We're going to keep going down the menu here over our next several videos here. Check out the playlist called Sibelius Tutorials, and it's going to take you through a lot of these different things as we get those uploaded there. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.